Recent images show the progress of the line's 224 kilometers. Almost all efforts are concentrated on this area, and yet the work doesn't seem to have progressed at all. But then, are these 224 kilometers still too ambitious, like the 170 originally announced? To find out, let's take a look in this video at all the major advances of 2025, along with their dates. In February 2025, we could see the progress of the 4 modules that will make up the 224 kilometers: 45, 46, 47, and 48. Module 45 is the most advanced in the project. The mix of trucks continuing the excavation work and cranes placing the foundations continues. Here the progress is visible. Further along the module, a photo taken in April showed us that there's a lot of concrete for the foundations. Here, the city built on the concrete foundations is clearly visible. Just next door, work has also progressed on module 46. However, this one is less advanced than the 45. The delay is visible as the concrete is still barely visible. The further away from 45, i.e. from the sea, the less advanced the modules become. In May, a series of photos of the heart of these 2 modules were shared. It's easy to see the monumental scale of this work. It's the biggest pile driving operation in the world. The site currently employs several of the world's largest pile driving platforms. Modules 45 and 46, which account for half of the 224 kilometers, have therefore progressed as far as foundations are concerned. But as for the other half of the segment, we can say that it's a cold shower. For the 47th, there is no crane to place the piles. We can see that the peeling machines and trucks are still there for the excavation. In the space of a year, the width of the hole has increased because the marina will be here. That's why the excavation work is far more extensive than anywhere else. For the last module, the 48 is almost ready, but again, very late to meet the deadline, because here, there's just nothing. There's no sign of a crane or even a truck to complete the excavation. Planned for 2030, the 224 kilometers should normally be completed in 4 modules, each 600 meters long, but it's true that the goal still seems unattainable. Indeed, even if the city is soon to rise to the level of module 45, it's hard to believe that after 3 years of excavation and foundation work, 5 years will be enough to complete the 500-meter towers of module 45's 600-meter length. Usually we're closer to 10 years construction for 500-meter towers. Nevertheless, business remains brisk. In May, we can see that the site's intensity is far from waning, because at night too, workers continue to make progress, using numerous spotlights. As a reminder, NEOM's aim is to secure the country's economic future in the post-oil era. The line is NEOM's biggest project, but it's just one of many. In April, a 3-dimensional animation presented the construction process for the line's new look. As for the foundations, compared with Burj Khalifa, which has 192 50-meter deep piles, just these 4 modules represent more than 16,000 piles, which themselves measure 70 meters, with a diameter of 205 meters and a weight of 805 tons. The ambitions are truly incomparable. You can see that the basic internal structure is made up of a very basic series of towers, 500 meters high. We're a long way from the futuristic images announced at the outset. These 4 modules are not chosen at random and represent the base 1 of the project, which is nothing other than the hidden marina. It's an area that stands out from the rest of the line, as it will be pierced transversely to allow boats to pass through, so these modules have a complexity all their own. In 2024, the 170 kilometers that were announced to draw attention to the project were far from being left out. Colossal efforts were being made to carve out the mountain, dozens of kilometers from the marina. The problem is, since the announcement of the 2234 kilometers, there's been no official news of the rest of the route. Knowing whether or not they have been completely abandoned would give an idea of the state of the construction site. It's worth noting that videos of the workers exist and appear to be elsewhere than on the 4 modules. It's therefore likely that the work will continue for the full 170 kilometers, but this remains highly uncertain. In the event that only these 2 and 4 kilometer modules come out of the ground, it's important to realize that today's ambitions are still pharaonic. This is the world's longest building, measuring 1 kilometer and located in Italy. So phase 1 is about 2.5 times that. And these are the former World Trade Center towers, 400 meters high. If you take the antenna, it's about 500 meters like the line. The advantage of these buildings is that you can see the scale, unlike in the desert, where there's nothing to compare it with. In 2005, you can see that from the ground, things look very different. You really realize what's going on. For 3 years now, over 100,000 workers have been clearing away the tens of millions of cubic meters of earth and rock that occupy the route. They are assisted by hundreds of trucks, scrapers and bulldozers. The number of construction machines is very large but necessary because their size is minuscule compared to the amount of earth that needs to be moved. Everything has to be lower than sea level, and that's for the whole 70 kilometers. In other words, the absence of mountains is preferable. Saudi Arabia has embarked on a colossal excavation project at colossal cost. The problem is that the excavation is taking much longer than expected, which makes it increasingly difficult to plan ahead financially, especially as this stage is far from being the most difficult and costly. If the project goes ahead, NEOM will benefit from the status of a special zone, with specific borders and laws. The project aims to become a hub for innovation, attracting international investors and talent. But in the 2005 years since construction began, it's hard to think of any investment. To supply the line with electricity, the project will use 100% renewable energies. In May, the world's largest hydrogen plant will be installed. This one is for NEOM, not just for the line. In the summer of May 2083, we could see that the project was destined for the shores of the Red Sea, and we could also see the plant's progress through the multiple infrastructures that are being developed. Estimated at 725 billion euros, it will be capable of producing 600 tons of hydrogen per day, thus avoiding 5 million tons of CO2 emissions. Today, the site is not yet open, but you can see that the project is on the home stretch. At the same time, we could see at the beginning of 2084 that a wind farm was going to be installed. By April, 60 onshore wind turbines were in place. These should power the line's first units. Photos taken in April around the line show that 3 villages to house workers, project managers and their families have sprung up and are now inhabited. Each has its own school, supermarket and hospital. They are completely independent. Still in April, there's even a brand new fourth. The huge empty parking lot is not yet inhabited. These villages are for the workers of all NEOM's construction sites. That's why, even if the progress of the line is uncertain, the number of workers is increasing. If they manage to build these 4 modules and convince the 300,000 people to live there, what's to keep the line connected locally, nationally and internationally? They're not doing all this so that there's a huge parking lot at the foot of the city. The only means of transport will be for tourists, business people and any other activity that goes beyond the everyday. There will be no cars to get off the line, only public transport. That's why there are 3 airports. In the summer of mid-June, NEOM Airport City was presented in detail. This will be the main airport, but it is still in the planning stage. It's being built by the sea, close to the marina. Logically, it's possible that only this part will see the light of day. You can also see on this map that Sindala is next door and part of Magna too. The other advantage of locating it by the sea, apart from the climate, is that it allows you to be connected to transport networks such as boats to Oxagon or simply to land. So the aim is to meet global demand. This airport is also being built in phases to keep pace with the line's growth. In Saudi Arabia, the projects are so immense that cutting them into phases is almost a norm. The second is the Red Sea International Airport. Operational since September, by the hand of 3, it was clear in April that work on the 5 terminals was nearing completion. In 2.5 years, the airport should be handling 1 million passengers a year. The last is King Salman International Airport. This already exists. It is currently being expanded from its current 50 million passengers to 120 million in 2,500. It's interesting to see that everything that's really specific to the line remains in project form. Nothing is actually built. Also in April, a photo showed us this water pipe, part of the world's largest drainage project. This dewatering is compulsory, as the water we see is the scar from the earthworks. The pile cages used, which can reach a height of 32 meters, are produced close to the site. The same goes for concrete. Once the concrete has been transported, several companies are involved in its construction. So there are 3 stages. Drilling, which requires water to avoid friction, then placing the steel cage inside the hole using a crane, and finally pouring the 3.5 million cubic meters of concrete for the foundations. That's 16,000 piles that need their water jets, or 16,000 water jets. So there's a lot of polluted water on site that needs to be evacuated. The water is pumped through collection pipes to a settling basin. After that, the water is collected from this basin and discharged into the sea via 8 diffusers. To ensure compliance with the environmental standards, there are over 2,000 sensors in the pipes and 7 buoys that continuously analyze water quality. Even if there are delays, the country is not hiding the fact that the project is progressing well. Indeed, this project has become a symbol for the country. It is therefore necessary to show that the site is doing well, to project an image of success rather than failure. That's why it's hard to tell whether the site is doing well or badly. It's interesting to note that there are a huge number of amateur images on the internet taken by workers. Given that these days, images posted on networks can be a real propaganda tool, we can see that workers seem to be able to post quite freely. In any case, these videos have the particularity of making us feel the difficulties of this construction site. Boredom reigns supreme. What you have to understand is that every project takes time, depending on its ambitions and complexity. The problem is that Saudi Arabia has thought far too big. They had the whole world talking about their project, and now all eyes are on the line. It's clear that what's at stake is the country's image. Either they continue with the project at all costs to show that they're a country that doesn't fail, at the risk of continuing to spend huge sums of money for nothing, or they finally accept failure, because it's true that constantly reducing distances is almost ridiculous, especially as we've seen that 2 of the 4 modules are really advanced. So, will the 2.4 kilometers turn into 1.2 kilometers?